Good evening. Tonight, we reminisce on the end of the Cold War by talking about the bloody conflicts that took place in the former country of Yugoslavia. When the Soviet Union collapsed and communism was falling worldwide, well, almost worldwide, North Korea, Yugoslavia was already showing cracks of
The cracks began to show as early as 1980 with the death of Yugoslav leader Josip Broz Tito. Tito held Yugoslavia together for years up until his death, sometimes by force. After his passing, tensions rose and nationalism increased dramatically. The politics of Yugoslavia at the time were very simple, but yet very controversial. At the time, Serbia had two autonomous provinces, and they were Kosovo, which we will get to a little later on, and Vojvodina. Serbia, Kosovo, Vojvodina, and the Yugoslav Republic of Montenegro made up the Serbian voting bloc within the League of Communists, while the other remaining countries, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Slovenia, and Macedonia, made up the other voting bloc within the League of Communists, which Slovenia openly condemned. In 1989, Kosovo's autonomy was revoked by the Yugoslav government, and as a result, the Albanian majority population in Kosovo went on a miners' strike, in which miners in Kosovo went on a hunger strike. In January 1990, in what will become the final meeting of the League of Communists, there was a dispute about the structure of Yugoslavia. Slovenia proposed a more autonomous nation with centralized governments, while Serbia proposed a more unified Yugoslavia. Because of this, the Slovenians, Croatians, and Macedonians all left the meeting to pure disgust. The League of Communists was then dissolved soon after, and multi-party elections took place within Yugoslavia for the first time, one being the Croatian Democratic Union, in which the leader, Franjo Tuđman, was elected. The new Croatian flag was risen, and which was soon followed by a declaration of independence from Yugoslavia. Croatia's population in 1991 had a clear majority of Croatians living in the country, making up 78% of the population. There was also a notable minority of Serbs at 12% of the population. The Serb majority areas of Croatia were on the border of Bosnia, ironically. One major reason the Serbs didn't want Croatia to become independent was because of the horrible memories and atrocities committed when Croatia was controlled by the Ustashi group occupied by Nazi Germany during World War II. In 1990, in the city of Knin, Croatia, where Serbs made up the majority, the Croatian Serbs started a rebellion, blocking off key roads in Croatia. While going to intervene via air, the Croatian attack helicopters were told to return to base by the Yugoslav Air Force, in which they obeyed. At this point, it was made obviously clear that the rebels were being supported by the Yugoslav army. In the following months, the rebels were given guns. Three Serb majority areas of Croatia, which were the SAO Kninska Krajina, SAO Western Slavonia, and SAO Eastern Slavonia, Baranja, and Western Sirmia. SAO, by the way, stands for Serbian Autonomous Oblast, and these three autonomous oblasts sought to join Serbia and break away from the rest of Croatia, and together formed the Republic of Serbian Krajina. On the 25th of June, 1991, both Slovenia and Croatia declared their independence from Yugoslavia. Slovenia's independence automatically brought them into the Yugoslav wars. Yugoslavia then sent troops to Slovenia to ask them to politely reconsider their independence. By this point, the Yugoslav wars had already begun, but being limited to Croatia and Serbia only. 2 days after Slovenia declared independence, the 10-day war began, in which Slovenia was able to fend off the much larger Yugoslav army. Not long later, the EU made an agreement, which was signed by Yugoslavia, Slovenia, and Croatia. This agreement detailed that the Yugoslav army must withdraw from Slovenian territory, both Croatia and Slovenia must postpone their independence, allow prisoner of war to be exchanged, and Slovenia was to take control of their border post. The Yugoslav army then withdrew their troops to prepare for a full-scale invasion of Slovenia. However, the Yugoslav army needed approval of the new Serbian leader Slobodan Milosevic to proceed with the invasion. However, Milosevic rejected this, as he didn't care if Slovenia left, because there weren't enough Serbs in Slovenia to care if Slovenia left. Slovenia consists of 88% Slovenes living in Slovenia, and only 2.5% of the entire Slovenian population was Serbs. Thus, the decision to let Slovenia become independent. Because Croatia had more Serbs on the other hand, Yugoslavia was not willing to let Croatia go so easily. Serbian nationalists in Croatia had already taken control of a dozen towns and villages within Croatia. Things got worse when in the Croatian border town of Vukovar, the violence escalated into mass slaughter. Yugoslav troops that were sent to the border with Croatia, they claimed to be peacekeeping forces when the opposite of peace was clearly happening around them. At this point, they weren't just after Serbian majority areas of Croatia, they wanted the entire country. Due to the escalating violence, all 6 republics were called to The Hague, which is an international court to discuss possible peace plans. Croatia stated that Croatia had every right to secede from Yugoslavia if they so wanted, while Serbia claimed that Serbians in Croatia had the right to join Serbia. European Union peace negotiator Lord Carrington asked Milosevic a question. Would you be prepared to accept the independence of Croatia subject to the human rights of Serbs living outside of Serbia? To the surprise of Lord Carrington, Milosevic said yes. During these meetings, the Yugoslav army was preparing a massive invasion of Croatia, including the capital of Zagreb. This was a major risk because if they did such thing, the Yugoslav army would not only face sanctions, but they would also face outside interference from the West. Carrington was eager to get the agreement on writing, but there was one major issue. The agreement wouldn't just make Croatia independent, but all 6 Yugoslav republics independent. Thus, Serbia refused to sign because he did not want to dissolve Yugoslavia. The plan wasn't just for Milosevic in Serbia, but for all the republics. The agreement needed 5 votes of yes to go through. Serbia said no, while the other 5 republics said yes. Montenegro's vote of yes actually came as a shocker because they had aligned themselves with Serbia. As it turned out, Italy had offered them a large foreign aid program if they had voted yes. Milosevic, who was understandably upset, forced Montenegro to change its vote or otherwise be portrayed as a traitor to Serbia. The letter was sent and the plan broke down. Around this time, Macedonia held an independence referendum, which saw 95.3% vote for yes and only 3.5% vote for no. Macedonia became the only Yugoslav republic to break away from Yugoslavia peacefully. Meanwhile in Croatia, Vukovar was under siege by the Serbians. The Croatian army held Vukovar for 87 whole days until they were finally defeated. After this, the Yugoslavians held 1/3 of Croatian land. In 1992, a ceasefire was signed between Yugoslavia and Croatia, which included the deployment of UN forces to keep the peace, and 3 areas of Croatia were to be under UN protection. This was not the bloodiest war of the Yugoslav wars, however. By far, the bloodiest war of the Yugoslav wars was actually the Bosnian War. Bosnia and Herzegovina was the most multicultural republic in Yugoslavia. 43.5% of the country were made up of Bosnian Muslims, 31.2% were Serbs, and 17.4% were Croats. The Bosnian Serb leader, Radovan Karadzic, stated, "I warn you, you'll drag Bosnia to hell. You Muslims aren't ready for war. You could face extinction." Basically, don't sue for independence. Bosnia and Herzegovina held an independence referendum anyway, with 99.7% voting for independence, in which the Bosnian Serbs boycotted the vote. The next day, a Serb was killed by a Bosniak, and in response, Serbia set up roadblocks in the capital of Sarajevo, and large parts of the country were occupied by Serbians. The Serbs demanded that Bosnia stop seeking international recognition. The Bosnian Serbs had established their own country, called the Republika Srpska. All Bosnian Serbs and the Yugoslav army were transferred to the Bosnian Serb army as a result. On the 27th of April, 1992, the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia was officially dissolved, as a new constitution was written with the proclamation of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia containing only Serbia and Montenegro. The United Nations rejected the application because they did not want to automatically continue the membership of the old Yugoslavia. The Bosnian Serbs in Bosnia began to take control of Serb-dominated areas within Bosnia, as well as many Muslim towns near the border. Also around this time, the Serbs would begin mortar attacks in the capital of Sarajevo, and the Bosnian capital would be under siege for nearly 4 years. Bosnian and Bosnian Croats were allied with each other at the beginning of the Bosnian War, but Bosnian Croats had goals similar to the Bosnian Serbs to take control of Croat-dominated areas of Bosnia. However, the Bosnian Croats didn't just take said territories in Bosnia, rather started taking over other areas of Bosnia. The Bosnian Croats set up their own republic within Bosnia, called the Croatian Republic of Herzegovina. In May of 1993, a UN commander was sent to the town of Srebrenica, which became a new home for Bosniaks who fled their homes because of the war. He was welcomed into Srebrenica with open arms, but when it came time for him to leave, the citizens would not allow him to leave unless he ensured their safety. Wanting to protect the lives of hundreds of thousands of Bosnians, he went against UN policy and proclaimed Srebrenica and other Bosnian cities as UN protection zones. At this time, the Bosnian Serbs had the town besieged. Later, a UN resolution proclaimed Srebrenica and other Bosnian towns had become under the protection of the United Nations. The international community then came up with the Vance-Owen Plan, which would divide Bosnia into 10 ethnic provinces: Free Bosniak, Free Serb, and Free Croat, with the neutral capital of Sarajevo. The Bosnians, the Croats, and the Bosnian Croats had all agreed to this. Even Milosevic urged the Bosnian Serbs to agree to the plan. But the Bosnian Serbs, knowing this plan would involve them giving back a huge amount of land they had already occupied, refused and the plan broke down. The Bosniaks and the Croatians signed a peace treaty in Washington after the United States had demanded that Croatia stop fighting the Bosnians if they wanted help from the West or face sanctions. They agreed to this plan as they wanted NATO to help take back Croatian land in Croatia from the Serbs. In February 1994, a mortar attack in Sarajevo by the Bosnian Serbs on a Bosnian marketplace saw the death of 68 people. In response to this horrifying attack, NATO issued the Bosnian Serbs with an ultimatum: withdraw your heavy weapons from the hills of Sarajevo within 10 days. The Bosnian Serbs rejected the ultimatum. The Bosnian Serbs wanted to show their military superiority to the Bosnians and show they could not be bullied by the West. They then launched a mortar attack on a hospital in the town of Gorazde, which was a United Nations safe area. In response, NATO launched an airstrike on a Bosnian Serb command post, and in retaliation to that, the Bosnian Serbs surrounded and captured about 150 UN personnel. Srebrenica, which was well under UN protection, was forcibly taken and will become known as the Srebrenica Massacre, in which thousands of civilians were killed. With violence at an all-time high and another mortar attack and another 37 dead was the final straw, and a full-scale NATO bombing campaign began against the Bosnian Serbs. Milosevic pressured the Bosnian Serbs to allow him to negotiate a peace treaty on their behalf, or their support from Belgrade, the Serbian capital, would be entirely cut off. Meanwhile in Croatia, the Croatian military had been preparing for several years to retake their land from the Croatian Serbs. In May and August of 1995, they launched 2 full-scale military invasions on Serbian-occupied territory. By this point, the Croats had a far stronger military. At around this time, a majority of Serbs began to flee the country, even communities that had lived in Croatia for centuries. Many Serb villages in Croatia were burned to the ground to ensure the Serbs would never return. With the Bosnian Serbs weakened, the Croats and the Bosnians teamed up once again to take back as much land as they could. Serbs began to flee to both Serbia and Montenegro. The Americans pressured them to stop as they wanted a peace treaty to be signed. Peace treaty negotiations took place in Dayton, Ohio, and the plan was to keep Bosnia and Herzegovina a single country, but divide it into 2 republics, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Republika Srpska, with a 3rd district, the Bertog district, in the northeastern part of the country. After 17 days of negotiations and 7 redrawn maps, the treaty was finally signed between all 6 republics. Though this was the end of the Yugoslav wars, this did not put an end to the violence. In the late 1990s, war broke out in Kosovo between the Albanian majority against Serbia, as they wanted independence. Backed by NATO, the Kosovo Liberation Army took effective control of Kosovo. The war ended in 1999, and on February 17, 2008, Kosovo declared their independence, though their independence is only recognized by 108 nations of the United Nations today. In 2000, after the overthrow of Slobodan Milosevic, Serbia and Montenegro gave up trying to be the sole successor to Yugoslavia, and they joined the UN as a new member in 2003 as the State Union of Serbia and Montenegro. This will only last 3 years, however, as Montenegro held a referendum and became independent in 2006, splitting the country up into the Republic of Serbia and the Republic of Montenegro. From a prosperous country in southeastern Europe to years of constant civil war to the eventual dissolution of the country entirely, Yugoslavia came and went, and it was a bloody, long, and complicated period of time, and a rough patch from the collapse of the USSR and the fall of communism. Today, all six or seven countries, depending on who you ask, are prosperous nations in their own right and are peaceful with one another, though not so pleasant memories still linger.
The Yugoslav wars were very bloody and saw the death of millions of soldiers and civilians alike. Many people were displaced and many fled to other countries or were executed on the spot. Ethnic villages were burnt, and the everlasting effects of the Yugoslav wars can still be seen today, with the way each country runs their own government, and the tensions that still linger on in the air between all the republics. Thankfully, all nations today are peaceful with one another. Well, except for Serbia and Montenegro, that is.